The rain came in sheets, roaring across the open plains like 1,000 galloping hooves. The rancher, Samuel Hart, had been fixing the barn door when he first heard the cry, a faint, broken sound carried by the wind. He paused, hat-brim dripping, listening through the storm. There it was again, a woman's voice. Against his better judgment, he grabbed his lantern, mounted his horse, and rode into the blackness, guided only by instinct and a feeling that trouble was close at hand. The night swallowed him whole, and thunder rolled across the mountains like a warning. He found her near the old creek bed, half collapsed against a boulder, her clothes clinging to her skin, her shawl torn to rags. When she looked up, lightning flashed, revealing a face too pale for a desert woman, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "Please," she breathed, barely louder than the wind. "Get inside first." The words trembled in the rain. For a moment Samuel just stared. He was a man used to silence, used to ghosts, never to pleas that felt like confessions. He dismounted slowly, helping her up with a gentleness that surprised even him. The cabin stood a mile away, its lone window glowing faintly against the storm. Samuel carried her across the threshold, boots dripping mud onto the wooden floor. He set her by the fire and tossed another log on. The flames jumped to life, spilling golden light across her face. She shivered violently, hugging herself as water pooled at her feet. Her dress was torn, her hands scraped raw. He wanted to ask who she was, but her eyes stopped him, deep, haunted eyes that told him enough. Someone was chasing her, and she'd come too far to turn back now. "Here," he muttered, pulling an old quilt from the chair and wrapping it around her shoulders. "You're safe here." She didn't answer, only stared into the fire, lips moving soundlessly. Samuel poured her a cup of coffee, setting it gently beside her, then crouched nearby. The storm rattled the shutters, thunder groaning low and long. When she finally spoke, her voice was a whisper. "You don't know what you've just done." He frowned. "Mum, I reckon I do. I kept someone from dying in the cold." She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No, you just put yourself in danger." Samuel leaned back, watching her carefully. There was more to this woman than a runaway. Her tone carried weight, like someone used to running from powerful men. "Danger's not new around here," he said quietly. "But I'd sure like to know who's bringing it." She looked up then, meeting his gaze for the first time. "They'll come for me," she said. "Before sunrise?" Her words struck him cold. The rain hammered harder, as if echoing the fear in her voice. "Then they'll find you under a roof and behind a loaded rifle," he said simply, and rose to check his gun. As he cleaned the barrel, he watched her from the corner of his eye. She'd begun to warm her hands by the fire, her expression softening a little. The flicker of flame painted her skin in gold and shadow. She couldn't have been more than 25, but there was a weight in her posture, like she'd lived through more than her share of winters. When she finally spoke again, her voice was steadier. "My name's Evelyn," she said. "Evelyn Moore." He nodded once. "Samuel Hart." A silence stretched between them, heavy but not unkind, the kind that only the lonely truly understood. Outside, the storm began to wane, the thunder rolling away toward the hills. Samuel poured himself another cup of coffee and leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "You got a family, Evelyn?" he asked. She looked down at her hands. "Not anymore." Her tone was final. Samuel didn't press. He'd seen enough loss to recognize the kind that couldn't be spoken aloud. The fire cracked softly, and for a brief moment, the cabin felt less like a refuge and more like a confession booth, both of them cloaked in the quiet truth of strangers hiding from the same cruel world. When the wind died, a faint sound replaced it, the distant clatter of hooves. Samuel's head snapped toward the window. Evelyn stiffened. "They found me," she whispered. He moved quickly, grabbing his rifle and peering through the rain-streaked glass. 3 riders moved through the darkness, their lanterns swaying. "Who are they?" he asked. Evelyn's voice shook. "Men from Carson's ranch. I used to work there." She swallowed hard. "Until his wife found out." Samuel turned, eyes narrowing. "You were his mistress?" She shook her head fiercely. "No, he forced me. When she saw me run, she sent her brothers to kill me." Samuel felt something cold twist in his gut. He'd known Carson, rich, cruel, a man who thought money made him untouchable. "You did right to run," he said. Evelyn's eyes filled again, tears shining in the firelight. "Then why does it feel like sin?" she whispered. He looked at her, something soft flickering in his weathered face. "Because good folk blame themselves for what evil men do." Outside, the hooves grew louder, closer. Samuel moved fast, dousing the fire until only embers glowed. "Get upstairs," he ordered. She hesitated, fear rooting her to the floor. "Go," he said firmly. "Now!" Evelyn darted up the creaking steps, disappearing into the shadows above. Samuel loaded his rifle, breath steady despite the pounding in his chest. He'd been in gunfights before, but never one like this. Not to protect a stranger, not for something that felt so much like redemption. The first knock came heavy on the door, followed by a man's shout. "Hart, we're looking for a runaway." "Carson's orders." Samuel said nothing. The second knock rattled the hinges. "Ain't seen no one," he finally called. "Now get off my land." A pause, then laughter. "You always were a fool, Hart." The door burst open with a crack. Rain poured in as three men stepped through, slick coats dripping, guns gleaming. Samuel fired first, the blast echoing off the cabin walls. One man fell, clutching his shoulder. The others ducked behind the table, shouting curses. "You don't want to die for her," one yelled. Samuel's jaw tightened. "Then don't make me." A second shot rang out, splintering wood. Upstairs, Evelyn gasped but stayed hidden, clutching the railing. The storm outside roared back to life, wind howling through the broken door like the breath of fate itself. The fight had truly begun. When the last echo faded, Samuel stood in the doorway, smoke curling from his rifle. One man lay unconscious, another crawled out into the mud, and the third fled into the darkness, shouting that Carson would come himself next time. Samuel turned to find Evelyn standing halfway down the stairs, trembling but unhurt. "You killed them," she whispered. "No," he said quietly. "I just stopped them." He set the rifle aside and met her eyes. "You can stay till morning. After that you'll have to decide where to go." But Evelyn didn't move. "You still don't understand," she said softly. Her voice carried something new, resolve. "You didn't just save me tonight," she continued. "You tied your life to mine." Samuel frowned. "What are you talking about?" She stepped closer, eyes glistening in the dying firelight. "Carson's men will tell everyone you harbored me. In their eyes, that makes you my husband." Samuel froze, thunder rumbling again in the distance. "You're saying—" "Yes," she cut in, voice trembling. "In their law and mine we're bound." For a long moment neither spoke. Then Samuel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well," he murmured, "reckon that explains why you said I didn't know." The first faint light of dawn crept through the cracked window, touching her face with gold. Samuel looked at her, this woman who had walked out of a storm and into his life like a curse wrapped in grace. He could have sent her away. He could have chosen silence. Instead, he just nodded once and said, "Then I guess I best learn what that means." Outside, the rain stopped completely. The desert breathed again, quiet and wide. Evelyn smiled faintly, eyes soft but unreadable. "You'll find out soon enough," she whispered. And as the sun rose, so did something neither of them expected, fate. The storm had rolled across the open plains like a beast unchained, the wind howling through the ranch fences, bending the mesquite trees till they groaned. Cole Turner stood at his doorway, rifle in hand, staring into the dark. He'd been through enough storms to know the difference between thunder and trouble, and tonight felt like both. When the knock came, faint but desperate, he froze. Another knock louder this time. Then a voice trembling through the rain. "Please, get inside first." Against his better judgment, he opened the door, and that's when she stepped in from the night. She looked like she'd run through hell itself. Barefoot, drenched, her torn shawl clinging to her shoulders. Mud streaked her dress, and fear lit her eyes like lightning behind storm clouds. Cole lowered his rifle, but not all the way. "Who are you?" he asked. "Just someone who needs to disappear," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The fire crackled behind him, throwing warm light across her face. He saw beauty there, yes, but more than that. he saw a secret, heavy and sharp enough to cut. He sighed, stepped aside and closed the door. She stood by the fire, wringing out her shawl as silence thickened between them. He poured her coffee, watching steam rise like the last breath of a ghost. She thanked him quietly, eyes down. "Name's Cole Turner," he said at last. "This here's my land. You're safe for now, but I ain't fond of lies." She met his eyes, calm but unreadable. "Then I'll tell you the truth when I can," she replied. Something in her tone made him believe her, though he knew he shouldn't. Hours passed. The storm eased. She dozed by the fire, and he watched her from the shadows, wondering what kind of trouble drove a woman to a stranger's door in the middle of nowhere. He could have sent her off come morning, but somehow he didn't. Instead, he laid a blanket over her and sat near the window, keeping watch through the last of the rain. When dawn came, the desert lay washed clean, as if the world had been born again. By breakfast, she was already working, tidying the cabin, fixing his torn curtain, moving with quiet grace. "You don't have to do that," he muttered. "I know," she said, not stopping. Something about her presence unsettled him. She belonged here as if she'd always been part of the place, her every movement softening the hard edges of his lonely home. Still, he kept his questions buried. Whatever she was running from, he figured it would find her soon enough. 3 days later, it did. A rider came from town, dust on his boots and a smirk on his face. Cole met him outside. "Got news for you, Turner," the man said, handing him a folded paper. "Looks like congratulations are in order." "You're a married man." Cole frowned, unfolding the document, and froze. It was a marriage certificate signed in his name, stamped by the town clerk. He looked up, stunned. "What the hell is this?" The rider chuckled. "Ask your wife." Inside she waited, her expression calm but wary. Cole slammed the paper on the table. "You mind explaining?" She took a long breath. "They were coming for me," she said softly. "The sheriff and the man I was supposed to marry. He paid for my hand like I was cattle. I ran, but the law said if I was another man's wife, they couldn't touch me." She looked at him then, her eyes shining. "So I made sure they couldn't." Cole stared, caught between anger and something else, something he didn't dare name. "You forged my name," he said slowly. "Yes," she answered, steady as stone. "And I'll leave if you ask me to." He studied her courage, her quiet strength. Then he shook his head and set the paper down. "No," he said finally. "Reckon I'll just have to get used to being a husband." The weeks that followed changed them both. Her name was Ilara, he learned, moved through his days like sunlight slipping through cracks. She cooked, tended the horses, mended his shirts, but it wasn't duty that filled her eyes. It was gratitude and something deeper unspoken. Cole, once a man of few words, found himself talking again, even laughing sometimes. The loneliness that had haunted him for years began to fade. And though neither said it aloud, the truth hung in the air between them like the scent of rain before a storm. One evening, he found her outside, gazing across the horizon. "You ever think of leaving?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I did," she admitted, "but now I can't." The wind carried her hair across her face, and he reached up to tuck it back. For a moment the world stilled. "I never asked for this," he said softly. "Nor did I," she whispered, "but maybe it's what we both needed." The silence that followed said more than words ever could. As spring turned to summer, the ranch began to flourish again. The rains had fed the land, and the herd was strong. But rumors reached them from town, whispers that Ilara's old fiancé was coming, papers in hand, to claim what he thought was his. When the day came, Cole was ready. The man arrived with 2 deputies and a sneer. "She's mine by contract," he spat. Cole stepped forward, calm and steady. "Not anymore." He handed over the marriage certificate, legal and sealed. The man's face twisted in fury, but the law couldn't touch them now. When they rode off, Ilara stood in the doorway trembling. Cole turned to her. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, eyes glistening. "I am now." That night, beneath the soft hum of crickets, she finally told him everything about the deal her father made, the man who'd tried to own her, the fear that had followed her every step. He listened, silent and patient, When she finished, he said simply, "You're safe now, Ilara. You're home." From then on, their life settled into a quiet rhythm. Two souls once bound by circumstance, now bound by something far stronger. Every sunrise felt like a promise, every sunset like peace. And sometimes, when the wind carried the scent of rain, she'd smile and say, "That night you opened the door. You changed my life." He'd tip his hat, grin softly and reply, "Guess it changed mine too." Because in that storm, beneath thunder and fear, a rancher had opened his door to a stranger and found not trouble, but love that came disguised as fate. And in the heart of the Wild West, where trust was rare and mercy rarer still, they built something neither had ever known before, a home forged not by chance, but by choice.